I'm sure you've all heard of the game called League of Legends. And if you haven't, well, I'm going to tell you something about it. I've been playing this game for a few years, and I've done enough research to be able to keep up with my opponents and my other classmates. League of Legends is a quick spreading waste of time, or at least this is what most people seem to think. League of Legends could be considered a MOBA, but it is really so much more. A MOBA is a multiplayer online battle arena. If any of you are still confused, this essentially means that there is a limited area of movement, the arena, and it is played, in most cases, against other players. League of Legends is similar to Smite, but is really so much more. League involves strategy, quick thinking, teamwork, and hand-eye coordination. The quick thinking comes from the plays that you have less than a second to make. Teamwork stems from the constant ganking and overall communication. One person cannot win a game alone. Your hand movements must be on point, and if you have bad hand-eye coordination, you can completely get rid of your chances of winning. There are many different methods or strategies in League, and I'll be talking about these in a little bit. To understand the game and its inner workings, you must be first somewhat familiar with the terminology. Champions are characters in the game controlled by the player, also known as a summoner. Some examples of champions are Karthus, Gnar, and Rek'Sai. There are currently more than 100 champions in the game, and new champs are being added all the time. This means if a summoner does not keep up to date, informed, and does not know the skill set of his opponent, he will be at a huge disadvantage. The Nexus can be thought of as a castle, because the goal is to destroy the enemies while protecting your own. The first method of protecting your Nexus would be turrets or towers. These are the first line of defense and do a ton of damage, especially in the early game. Minions are your trusty companions. They are small, don't seem to do much damage, but most of the time it's these little guys that win games. In groups, they can devastate towers and have been known to save lives on multiple occasions. Minions are used for many things, but one of the most important is soaking up damage, for that comes from turrets. Lanes are just big paths. There are 3 lanes, a top lane, a mid lane, and a bot lane. These lanes are where the majority of the action happens, more specifically in the mid. Now that you have an idea of how many things are going on at once, you must be wondering how the game ends, how you can win. There are 2 different ways in which to win. The simplest is through a surrender. When the enemy sees no light at the end of the tunnel, they have the option of starting a surrender vote at the 20-minute mark. This doesn't save anything except for time. The more official and common way, however, is to destroy the enemy nexus. To do this, you must destroy the towers, champions, minions, and the overall morale of the opposing players to bust a way through. After destroying everyone in your path, you may finally be rewarded with the seemingly unnecessary task of taking the Nexus. There are many ways to accomplish this, but the meta is the most traditional. The meta is another way of saying strategy. In League of Legends, when people say meta, they are generally talking about where different champions are placed during a match. To really understand the meta, you need to understand the objectives and other key locations. One of the most popular objectives is Baron. Baron is located in the jungle and gives great bonuses to the team if he's killed. Dragon on the other side of the jungle serves a similar purpose. When the dragon is killed, he gives a different advantage depending on how many times he's been killed by that team. The lanes that surround the jungle are also immensely important to understanding the meta. There are 3 lanes, like I've said, top, bottom, and mid. The current meta in League of Legends involves multiple types of champions. These are fairly easy to understand. First off, a champion is generally either AP or AD, ability power or attack damage. AP champs use spells to do magic damage, while attack damage champs use basic attacks to do physical damage. The second attribute you should look at is whether or not they're ranged or melee. Melee champs 90% of the time are in AD, but not always. Melee champs need to run up and hit the enemy. An example of this would be Braum. Ranged champions attack from a distance. They stand behind their teammates and use them as shields. After looking at the kind of damage they do, you should look at their overall attributes. Some champions are tanks. Tanks still do specific types of damage, but that's not their job. Their job is to take as much damage as possible. These are frontline shields for the rest of the team. Assassins are the opposite. Assassins have very little health, but do high damage and grab kills instantly. Assassins pick a target, jump on them, kill them, and back out as quickly as possible. This is why assassins are bad in multiple person skirmishes, because their damage is generally single target oriented. Fizz is an excellent assassin. Some champions are marksmen. Marksmen are always ranged and always deal physical damage. Marksmen deal high damage, but it is spread over more time than assassins, so it takes them a lot longer to kill someone. Marksmen are great in multiple person skirmishes because they can just click on someone else and change targets. Vayne is extremely effective at this playstyle. Bruisers are basically tanks. They're even referred to as off-tanks because they have a lot of health, but they actually do good damage. Tryndamere is an off-tank and usually played top lane. Supports are easily the most unique. Supports vary immensely in skill sets, but always have a spell that helps the ADC, such as Leona. Now that you know what kind of options you have, you probably want to know what to do once you pick. And if you don't care, you should. Top lane has one champ 90% of the time and is almost always an off-tank such as Tryndamere, but sometimes involves full tanks, Mundo, and assassins, LeBlanc. Mid lane involves APCs, ability power carries. They do magic damage typically from afar, such as Morgana, think of Lux. Assassins also find a role in mid lane, such as LeBlanc and Zed. Bot lane has two champions, ADCs and supports. ADCs are attack damage carries, and are always marksmen. An ADC's job is simply to do damage to whoever they can reach, and lots of it. Draven is a great ADC due to his higher than average AD damage. Supports are always there for the sole purpose of aiding the ADC. Supports can do this in a plethora of ways. They can be tanks and take all the damage for the ADCs, similar to Braum. They can be full of disabling abilities to set up kills for the ADCs, again, think of Leona or Thresh. Or they can have a spell that heals the ADCs, such as Karma or Soraka. That is just how the game begins. Each game is totally different and a new experience each time. The game can change from kill to kill and phase to phase. Each phase is completely different. It starts with early game, which is honestly the most boring part, but admirably the most important. The things that happen in early game can heavily tilt the game in someone's favor. Early game involves farming primarily, and farming is just a constant onslaught against the enemy's minions. Mid-game is usually when roaming becomes a danger. In mid-game there's a lot less farming and a lot more traveling around the map. Late game is the hardest unless you have an advantage. This is where summoners who were originally getting destroyed finally have a chance to come back and make a difference. Late game, everyone has everything they plan to buy and does a lot of damage, if that's their job. Ganking is just one or more champs coming into a lane stealthily and getting kills. Ganking starts in the early game to potentially cause a snowball. When one team is snowballing, it means that they're doing really good and getting out of control. Draven is excellent at snowballing. Ganking gains the lane and the ganker gold to help them through the phase. To accomplish a gank, the ganker must have some sort of disabling ability or an ability to enhance their own speed. Some jungles such as Shaco and Evelynn may even turn invisible to surprise the enemy. A champ that would increase their speed would be Olaf, and a champ with a disable would be Rammus. Strategies throughout the game are multitudinous, but there are a few predominant strategies throughout the game. All mid is the most common one. Just like it sounds, everyone goes into the mid lane and tries to kill the other team. This accomplishes a few things. 1. For every kill or assist you get, you receive more gold. The more gold you get, the more items you can buy, the more damage you can do. On top of gold, you're also rewarded because they're dead. Once someone is dead, they can no longer kill you. When one person who's on the other team is dead, you stand a better chance of killing the rest of them, which leads to the next strategy, pushing. When you and a few others go to a lane and take as many towers as you can. Each tower gives you gold upon destruction and cannot do damage once destroyed. On top of these things, it also allows you to get closer to the enemy base, the Nexus. Split pushing is done for the same reason and tends to be more sneaky. This is when one or sometimes two people go to a lane and push the lane on their own. Think of Sivir. League of Legends takes more patience than most people possess. In fact, the whole process of downloading and the first update can take numerous hours depending on your connection. Each game can take approximately 45 minutes or more. If you do not stay up to date by reading the patch notes which describe each update and try out each new champion, you will lose. You need to know what to buy for your character in game and what your role is. People do say League of Legends is just a game, and this is completely correct. But this game in particular is full of thinking. The intellect involved is amazing. There are multiple things you must know at once: where each champion is, where each objective is, what everyone has done, and most importantly, what they will do. League of Legends is fast growing, and this has caused many haters to come out of the mist. People simply cannot comprehend how League of Legends, which is just a game, can be so entertaining and so difficult. However, just like in sports, which also happen to be just games, if you are not willing to put in the work, you will not understand or be good at the said game.